Hello. Thank you for taking the time to visit the Smyrna School District Standards-Based Grading information page. Throughout the coming weeks and months, the Office of Curriculum and Instruction will be sharing information and resources regarding how the district reports student learning through our standards-based report card. This presentation serves as an introduction to standards-based grading, what it is, and why the district made this change. In the summer of 2018, a standards-based grading advisory council was assembled and charged with aligning grading practices that accurately reflect student learning and provide parents and guardians with clear and actionable feedback. After some unforeseen delays, the school board determined that the Smyrna School District would transition to standards-based grading in kindergarten through grade 5 in September of 2021. Today's presentation has a very distinct focus: to define for our community exactly what standards-based grading is and provide the rationale for adopting standards-based grading. But first, we should ask ourselves, what is the purpose of grading in the first place? The purpose or goal of grading is to evaluate students' learning and performance, and at the same time, report that performance to students and parents. The process of grading should meet some basic yet very important criteria. Grading practices should be accurate, be meaningful, and be consistent when communicating what a student knows and is able to do as a result of their learning. Another important characteristic of effective grading practices is that the feedback is specific when describing both where the students are on their learning progression and identifying the next steps required in their learning. First, standards-based grading measures students' proficiency on well-defined learning targets and emphasizes the most recent evidence of learning. Let's focus on that second part for a moment. Emphasizes the most recent evidence of learning. Unlike traditional grading practices, which average all scores over the course of a lengthy marking period, standards-based grading focuses primarily on the most recent check for understanding and mastery. In standards-based grading, less emphasis is put on whether a student can or can't show mastery at the beginning of the year. Rather, it focuses on what the student has mastered by the end of the school year. Next, standards-based grading communicates content mastery by using multiple targets and allows teachers to see exactly which concepts students understand well and which they need more instruction or practice with. This differs from traditional grading practices, which only report a single number or letter per overarching content area. Lastly, standards-based grading communicates how students are performing on a set of clearly defined learning targets as defined by the content standards. Specifically, standards-based grading solely focuses on students' learning and removes factors such as attendance, missing schoolwork, and classroom behavior. Now that we've talked about the purpose of grading and loosely defined what standards-based grading is, it's time we share why the Smyrna School District adopted standards-based grading. The obvious answer to the question, why change, is to do better. Maya Angelou fittingly said, "Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better." The Smyrna School District adopted this mindset to shift the focus from chasing points and including non-academic factors to evaluating learning based solely on mastery of skills and content. When it comes to evaluating and communicating students' learning and performance, now we know better. Remember our purpose for grading: to evaluate and report or communicate students' learning and performance. Traditional grading practices, however, often combine both academic and non-academic measures that are not reflective of student learning. Now that we've defined standards-based grading and explained the rationale for changing our grading practices, we must also take a hard look at more traditional grading practices, our previous practices. One of the biggest shortcomings of traditional grading is the use of averages, or averaging all scores over the course of a marking period. It hardly seems like an accurate reflection of learning over time When you use scores at the very beginning of a marking period and average them together with scores late in the marking period after concepts have been taught and practiced. As previously mentioned, traditional grading, specifically report cards, only report a single grade per subject. For example, at the end of a marking period, a student may receive a B or an 86 for reading. But that B or 86 doesn't indicate exactly what the student has and has not yet learned. If your doctor graded you at your last visit with an 86, you might be very pleased with that. But you don't really have any idea where hidden concerns may lie. You may have scored very high on your weight, your heart rate, and your blood pressure, but you scored terribly on your cholesterol levels. This is important information that your 86 did not reveal. Traditional grading practices use averages over the course of a marking period. Within those averaged individual scores, there are likely to be zeros in the gradebook due to work not being handed in or points added for extra credit. An assignment not handed in no way indicates whether learning has or has not occurred. Likewise, very often, extra credit points or grades are not connected to any content or learning whatsoever. Extra credit is often awarded for some other non-academic positive reinforcement. The last shortcoming of traditional grading is that different graded artifacts are weighted differently. While we may agree that culminating summary assessments should hold more weight than independent practice classwork, we might ask, how much more? Should assessments be 50% of a student's grade? More? Less? Strong arguments could be made, but it still would be relatively arbitrary in nature. To summarize the reasons for the district's decision to change its grading practices: A, standards-based grading practices provide both students and parents with more specific feedback about learning. B, traditional grading practices fall short of our needs. And C, grading and report cards should communicate student ability. This informational presentation is just the beginning of many planned opportunities to help educate families on our standards-based grading system and report card. Continue to visit the curriculum and instruction page on the Smyrna School District website and click on standards-based grading to check for more updates and information. For immediate questions, please contact your child's school or the Office of Curriculum and Instruction at the email address below. Thank you for your continued support and commitment to your students' education and the Smyrna School District.